Richard Watterson isn't just Gumball's goofy dad. What looks like lazy comic relief hides a walking paradox that breaks Elmore's logic. His body ignores physics, his intelligence shifts unpredictably, and even the timeline bends around him, especially in episodes like The Job, The Disaster, and The Choices. So how did this irresponsible character become the key to understanding Elmore's reality and its rules? Richard Watterson's paradox is simple to describe, but unbelievably complex once you dig into it. At its core, the paradox is this: Richard's behavior, abilities, memories, and even his physical existence consistently contradict the established rules of the world. He does not just bend logic, he ignores it. He is both impossibly strong and unbelievably fragile, a contradiction that completely collapses any sense of realism in The Disaster. He is inconsistently smart and profoundly clueless, emotionally wise in some moments and emotionally reckless in others. Sometimes he is a victim of Elmore's chaos, and other times he is the very thing causing it. On paper, these contradictions should not coexist in a single character. Yet Richard embodies all of them at once. His paradox shows up in four major categories: intelligence inconsistency, physical impossibility, timeline contradictions, and emotional and narrative influence. Each of these traits can be dismissed as cartoon exaggeration when viewed alone. But when you examine them together, especially when The Job is viewed alongside The Choices, a much deeper pattern reveals itself. Elmore does not behave like a normal world. It does not follow consistent rules of physics, biology, or time. Instead, it behaves like a reality shaped entirely by emotion and narrative logic. And no character exposes that truth more clearly than Richard Watterson. And that is where the tension begins, because the more closely we examine Richard, the harder it becomes to argue that he is just another chaotic resident of Elmore. He is not on the edge of the chaos. He is at the center of it. Let us start with Richard's mind. On the surface, Richard appears to be the least intelligent character in the show, a role firmly established in The Job. In that episode, Richard's complete inability to function in even the simplest work environment turns him into a symbol of irresponsibility. He forgets basic tasks, misunderstands obvious instructions, and fails to grasp danger, responsibility, or consequences. He does not just struggle with adulthood, he actively resists it. But the paradox begins when we look at moments like The Choices. In that episode, Richard's decisions suddenly carry weight far beyond his usual limitations. His actions do not just affect him or his family, they ripple outward, reshaping reality itself. Outcomes branch, consequences multiply. Entire paths of reality hinge on choices made by the same character who could not hold a job or follow simple rules. This is not random inconsistency, this is conditional intelligence. Richard demonstrates flashes of understanding, intuition, and effectiveness precisely when the narrative demands it. He does not become smarter because he learns or grows. He becomes smarter because the story requires scale, consequence, or emotional impact. Richard's intelligence rises or falls based entirely on emotional necessity. When the show needs him to be pathetic for humor, he becomes unbelievably clueless. When the story needs weight, tension, or causality, as it does in The Choices, he becomes strangely effective without ever realizing it. This leads us to the core realization: Richard has no stable intelligence level. The universe gives him exactly as much intelligence as the emotional logic of the moment requires. This is our first clear indication that Elmore is not governed by physical reality. It is governed by narrative rules, and Richard, more than anyone else, exists outside those rules. Now for the most famous part of the paradox: Richard's body. At first glance, Richard's physical resilience feels like standard cartoon exaggeration. But when you pay attention to how other characters are treated, the inconsistency becomes impossible to ignore. In The Disaster, Richard survives falls, explosions, crushing forces, and environmental collapse that should completely obliterate him. Buildings fall, reality breaks down. Other characters suffer visible, lasting consequences. Richard does not. This is not just durability, it is exemption. His body stretches, compresses, inflates, deflates, and ignores gravity and mass entirely. But the most important detail is not that Richard breaks physics. It is how the universe reacts, or rather, how it does not react when he does. When Nicole breaks physics, it is treated as intense and dramatic. The world reacts with fear, tension, and escalation. When Gumball breaks physics, it is treated as meta and self-aware. The show acknowledges the absurdity directly. But when Richard breaks physics, whatever, especially in the disaster, the universe treats it as normal. There is no shock, no escalation, no consequence. This implies something deeply unsettling. The world expects Richard to be impossible. It is not responding to him as an anomaly. It is accommodating him as a constant. And if Richard is immune to physical rules, the question becomes unavoidable. What else is he immune to? The answer lies in Richard's emotional role. Richard is simultaneously the emotional heart and the emotional chaos engine of the Watterson family. He is loving, supportive, and deeply attached to his family, yet also reckless, unreliable, and dangerously carefree. This contradiction is most clearly exposed in The Parents, where Richard's presence both stabilizes and destabilizes the family at the same time. When Richard is present, the tone of the show shifts, stakes lower, logic loosens. The world becomes softer, more absurd, and more forgiving. Problems that would normally spiral into danger are defused through silliness. When Richard is absent, the tone changes dramatically. Scenes become sharper, more grounded, and emotionally heavy. Consequences feel real again. Fear and tension return. This tells us something crucial. Richard is not just a character reacting to Elmore. He is a narrative anchor. His presence actively reshapes how the universe behaves. When he is involved, Elmore becomes Richard-like. When he is absent, Elmore becomes Nicole-like, Gumball-like, or Darwin-like, depending on who takes control. Richard does not adapt to Elmore. Elmore adapts to Richard. This is the emotional paradox at the center of his character. Richard's worldview becomes the worldview of the universe. His lack of internal structure creates a lack of structure in the world itself. But the paradox does not stop there. One of the strangest aspects of Richard's paradox has nothing to do with intelligence or physicality. It has to do with time. And, The Choices exposes this more clearly than any other episode. In that episode, Richard's decisions do not merely affect outcomes. They fracture reality. Cause and effect become flexible. Consequences feel optional. The timeline itself bends to accommodate him. Richard is not bound by continuity. Continuity reshapes itself around Richard. This is the moment where everything clicks into place. Richard's intelligence, body, memories, and emotions, and continuity do not make sense because they are not supposed to. Richard's paradox exists because Elmore is a world where emotional truth overrides physical truth. Nicole's emotion makes the world intense. Gumball's emotion makes the world meta. Darwin's emotion makes the world sweet. But Richard's lack of emotional limits makes the world nonsensical and chaotic. Richard is not breaking the rules. He is revealing what the rules actually are. Richard does not contradict Elmore's reality. He defines it. The resolution of Richard Watterson's paradox comes down to a single truth. Richard exists in a universe that refuses to impose limits on someone who does not recognize limits in the first place. He is a walking loophole, a reality glitch, a narrative anchor, a paradox that exposes the emotional physics of Elmore. When Richard is around, the universe behaves like Richard. When he's gone, the universe behaves like someone else. And that is why Richard Watterson's paradox matters. What looks like simple cartoon silliness is actually the blueprint for how Elmore's reality works. Richard is not just a joke character. He is the key to the rules that govern the entire universe. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe, and tell me which Gumball paradox I should solve next.